Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Facebook Live with GAE. I am Lisa Morgan, a kindergarten teacher and current president of GAE.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Doe, a physics teacher in Augusta, Georgia, and I'm the current vice president for the Georgia Association of Educators.
And good evening. I'm Carly Shaw. I'm a physical science teacher in Fulton County and the current secretary treasurer of GAE.
I'm Joe Fleming. I'm a lobbyist for GAE at the state capitol.
Faisal Khan, state campaign director.
So this evening we are having our happy spring break post signing die recap. For those of you who are not aware, sine die is the name for the last day of the legislative session. And that was Monday, and we were there until about 12:25 Monday night. So it was a long day. I will describe it as it was kind of a slow day until it wasn't. And then once it stopped being slow, it was fast and furious. So it was, I would say, interesting because everything seemed to be moving at a snail's pace. And the House was in recess, and then they were not in recess, and they were in recess again. The Senate kind of did the same thing. And then all of a sudden they were both in and bills were flying fast and furious. So Joe, you want to start us out with the recap?
Yeah, it was the kind of session that would make you want to tear your hair out. We got some good things done. I felt ready to declare victory until a certain point during sine die, the last day of the session, where a lot of really bad things happened. Hard to say where it began, but let's talk about some good news first. GAE and because of the actions of our members, stopped all traditional voucher bills this year. There were about 6 bills this year that would have expanded or created new private school tuition subsidies. None of those passed. Only one of them got to the floor, and that was in the Senate, and that was defeated on a 20-29 vote. I'm convinced that had it not been for the members responding to our calls to action, our members contacting legislators by phone, email, and other ways, I'm convinced that would not have happened without you guys, and I'm very grateful and appreciative of that. But guess what? The voucher people will be back again next year, pushing the limits as far as they can. It's what they do. They've got lots of out-of-state money backing them, and they'll be back again. You'd think this year would be a rebuff to them, but it won't be. They'll be back as greedy and eager to expand private school tuition vouchers as much as possible. There was a voucher-related bill on sine die that many of you also responded to our request to contact legislators. That's HB 517. You may not know it, but there's an existing tax incentive in Georgia law that essentially rewards donors to groups that fund private school tuition, gives them a tax break. The state can spend up to $100 million a year on it, which is an incredible amount. But the pro-voucher folks wanted to double that to $200 million a year, or over 10 years, $1.8 billion. That bill was trimmed back significantly over the last few days of the session. The pro-voucher folks got 20% of what they wanted. There is an increase, but it is a much lesser amount. In exchange for that amount, we did win additional transparency and accountability for that program. So I consider that a defeat for the other side. It's not an ideal situation for us, but it's again a situation where GAE can point to our lobbying efforts and the actions of our members as having an effect on that bill, which was a positive effect on what it had been. So we start with vouchers there. Another bill that came down and kind of changed my opinion on the session at the last minute was House Bill 1084. 1084 is a bill that has been brewing all session. It prohibits the teaching of what the bill calls divisive concepts. And these are concepts about race and racism that cannot be taught in public schools once the governor signs this bill. For example, you cannot speak of the issue of whether the United States is a racist nation or not. That would be prohibited. It's the kind of bill that would cause administrators and educators to be very cautious about how they teach issues pertaining to race and racism, whether it be in a history class, a literature class, or a journalism class. It's extremely vaguely written. It is subject to interpretation, and it's going to have a chilling effect on education. I don't have any doubt about that. Unfortunately, after midnight last night or Monday night, an amendment was added to the bill that creates an oversight committee that would set policy regarding the participation of transgendered girls in high school athletics. A bill had passed earlier in the session, SB 435, which would have been a straight up prohibition on transgender girls participating in so-called girl sports in high school. That bill passed the Senate, but it never got traction in the House. There was an attempt to add it on to another bill, HB 1215, on charter schools. That was ruled non-germane. But in the end, I guess the compromise was to create this oversight committee, which includes the governor, lieutenant governor, also includes representatives from the School Board Association and the Superintendent's Association, to make a policy decision about whether or not GHSA, Georgia High School Association, or schools can have policies against transgender girls competing in public schools. That was added unexpectedly. It was a complete surprise, I think, to us and everybody else. During the course of the debate, the very short debate over that, which really didn't even address the amendment. Those of us on the third floor, lobbyists and observers and guests, it was a very sobering time. The whole tenor of the session seemed to just become very, very sober, in shock and I think disbelief of what had just happened. But that's one of the important pieces of legislation, or noteworthy, or notorious pieces of legislation that passed on the final day.
Well, Joe,
Yes,
it
ma'am.
still sounds discriminatory to me.
I think you can sort of make that conclusion, yes. Even the proponents of the original bill, the Save Our Girls Sports bill, realize there are no real issues here in Georgia on this right now. It's not a big deal in Georgia right now, but they're running on a campaign that includes some of these concepts about certain children that drives their agenda. And for the governor and for a lot of Republicans, I guess they see it as an important political position in winning their party's nomination. It's kind of sad.
Joe, obviously, I don't think anybody has really seen the exact language that was passed. That was one of the things that was, to me, so shocking that, and I'm just going to say it was anti-democratic. The fact that the senators, a motion was made for them to vote on this amendment and agree to this amendment, and none of the senators had seen it. And when the motion was made for the amendment to be printed so that they could read it, the Republicans, being honest, it was the Republicans, voted no and voted against printing the bill and letting our representatives read what they were going to be voting on.
So then why'd they vote yes if they didn't know what they were voting on? What kind of mess?
Exactly. That's what to me is the worst part about the way they did it. That the representatives in the House, it was never addressed. This is what the amendment is. And then it went to the Senate within like 20 minutes and they're voting, and the Republicans voted not to print the bill. I mean, number one, to me, why did they even need a motion to print the bill to see what they were voting on? That was eye-opening to me. That they
And by the way, schools and the Georgia High School Association can already make rules, and they do. Each school, GHSA can already make rules regarding transgender students. So it's not necessary anyway, even if you support the position. But on both, Lisa's exactly right. And this is one of the reasons my attitude about the session kind of changed. The two bills that we've talked about, House Bill 1084, which is now the race and racism / transgender legislation, and 517, which affects the income tax incentive for contributions to private school. Both of them were done in complete darkness. The conference committee that met on 517, there was never notice published of that. We would try to trail the members of the conference committee to find out where they were going. Who knows? They may have met in the bathroom, in the hallways, on personal phone calls, but there was no good government aspect to it whatsoever. Word will trickle out, and there was just no opportunity for the public to be engaged in that, and no opportunity for us to watch the hearings or comment on them as they went on. And 1084, Lisa's exactly right. It was brought up. Nobody knew what it said. Nobody saw the amendment to it. It was never debated in a House committee or on the House floor. I'm not even sure they actually mentioned the amendment. They just voted on it. I don't think anybody knew what it was. And that's just bad government and deserves a thumbs down from every Georgia citizen on the way those bills were treated.
That's awful.
It was, and I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it. We know that Senator Sally Harrell and Senator Elena Parent, and I'm sure many other senators had pushed their button. They push a button and their light lights up when they want to be recognized. The lieutenant governor said that no lights were on. So either they all broke at the same time, or he was ignoring the fact that their lights were on. And I think that's what, to me, is such an issue, that we're at the very end. It's 12:15. You're trying to rush something through, and you do it in such a way that it brings the whole process into question.
Yeah. I posted in the chat, and Grace, you might want to confirm that this goes to it, but a copy of the transgender amendment that was added at 1084. So if you're interested in knowing more about what that does, if I did it right, that link will take you to a photocopy of the amendment.
I will see if I can find. That's one page I saw. We'll look and hopefully I'll be able to put it in the comments for our members that are watching. My question about this too, beyond the fact that it's providing for discrimination against transgender students who we I mean, none of the sponsors of this bill can name a single transgender student participating in high school athletics. This allows this appointed committee to make any policy about high school athletics. So my question is, isn't this a state takeover of the Georgia high school athletics? And is that really what we want?
Well, it's doubly sad too, Lisa, because one of the big issues this session was on mental health. It was a priority for the speaker, almost everybody at the Capitol really, is that one of the things, for example, the mental health bill that passed does is it creates parity. It requires insurers to treat mental health just as they do physical health and provide the same coverages for. And of course, we know that suicide rates are high among transgender students. They're bullied and persecuted, and it's sadly ironic that right after the mental health bill passes, this becomes one of the final actions that's taken. The link I posted most recently is to Greg Bluestein's Twitter page. Greg is a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I believe that link takes you a picture of the first page, and then there's an arrow that you can click to see the remaining, I think, 2 pages of that amendment.
Yeah. And
So
I
that,
shared in
go
the
ahead.
comments, because it, you know, to establish policies and procedures and to conduct any independent audit, review, or investigation they deem necessary, including audit, review, or investigation of the classifications of participating schools. So we're going to have this committee redesigning high school athletics in our state. That seems a bit of an overreach, but
I have a question too about that. This bill that they passed that has this legislation, what about the charter schools? And what about the voucher schools or whatever, the private schools? Do they follow GHSA?
That's a really good question. I think 1084, as it was before it was amended, applied to charter schools on the divisive concepts issue. And I do want to say on 1084, as a bill on race and racism, GAE was directly responsible for some improvements to that bill. We'd love seeing it die, but in the initial draft, teachers could have gone to jail for teaching some of these divisive concepts. Grace Khan was able to get an amendment to get the sponsored and include an exemption for advanced placement. So
Yay, Grace.
yeah.
The sponsor gives her complete credit for that.
Joe's tooting my horn is all.
Take a bow,
I think-
Grace.
I said one thing to Will Wade and it came out a completely different way, but anyway.
It was a tough fight to defeat that bill, but being able to keep our teachers from going to jail was a priority, and we were successful on that. So I think, again, on 1084 as a divisive concept race bill, is going to have negative. It's going to affect the teaching of history. It's going to have a chilling effect. But at least now our teachers don't go to jail if they make a mistake or misinterpret it.
Or if a student asks a question, which we have no control over.
Or I think the more I've thought about this, I think the impact is going to be different in history. I think it's going to have a greater impact in other content areas, because I think the history standards will cover the history teacher when the history teacher is teaching about the civil rights movement, because that's in the history standards. But that's not in the language arts standards. So if a language arts teacher chooses to use, for example, Dr. King's letter from the Birmingham jail to teach a concept in language arts, the concept they're teaching is in the standards, but the use of that letter is not in the standards. So I think that's where we will see the impact even more in those areas where language arts teachers are choosing essays, letters, books by diverse authors, which our students need to be exposed to. I think that's where we will see a lot of the complaints under this bill being filed.
Lisa, do any of our members have questions about those two bills?
I haven't seen any questions in the chat, and I will check. And I figure while we're, I just want to point out, no, we've got people saying hello to us. I know many of our members are on spring break this week. Something else I want to point out, I know it's going to take a couple of days for everything to be updated and posted on the General Assembly website. But these things that happened at the last minute are certainly not there yet. So we can't even see what it actually, our representatives voted on it without seeing it, and now we can't see what they voted on either.
I'm supremely disgusted that our legislators who are put there by us to support us and do the job that we expect them to do, which is put forth their best effort in making decisions about these laws, and they didn't even read. I'm just floored.
Well, there are a couple of things on sine die last day of the session that kept us busy also. Lisa, you want to talk to him a little bit about the the recess bill?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's
The racist,
That's
recess bill. Sorry.
Yeah, no. House Bill 1283 did pass, and it kindergarten through 5th grade says recess shall be scheduled for those students daily, unless they have health and PE or inclement weather, all those, you're on a field trip that lasts too long, et cetera, et cetera. It also continues for our middle school that Carly's like, that each school district will have to have a policy about unstructured break time for middle school students. So your local district can provide that unstructured break time. They don't want to call it recess in middle school, I guess. So that is a good thing. And Representative Demetrius Douglas, who was a sponsor of the bill, says that the governor has said he will sign it this time. A couple of years ago, when we had a recess bill passed, he did veto that one. So hopefully this one the governor will sign. It was probably at the end of one definitely good thing that was done. The budget, I'll go to the other good thing. Both houses adopted the conference committee report on the budget, which does include full funding of the QBE formula and the $2,000 raise for educators. Now, here's the thing everybody's got to understand about this for people, because I know people are going to be saying this. It is a $2,000 raise added to the salary schedule. That means you get it for the full year. So the $2,000 is going to be divided amongst all your paychecks next year. And yes, you're going to pay taxes on it. The bonus that's coming this spring will be one time, which I think we have some people that prefer that. I don't know if you all hear from people that way. But the $2,000 raise was applied to the salary schedule. So once it's applied to the salary schedule, it's permanent. So,
Good, then he actually fulfilled the promise that he made
Correct.
yes. And
regarding those the
regarding
teacher
the pay raise, yes. The other thing that I think we need to talk about briefly, Joe, because I know that a lot of our members got this last week, and I actually talked to a member who thought the email was a scam and deleted it. The other $125 of Kemp cash is what we're calling it around here, for classroom supplies. All classroom teachers and paraprofessionals should have received that email, and I'm not sure how it works. So Carly, you didn't receive your email.
No, I did not.
There is an email. There is a link where you can send in that you should be getting it. It's $125 for classroom supplies, but it doesn't look like it's the same process as the Sunny money. Y'all remember when Sonny Perdue was running for re-election and we got the Sunny money and they sent you the prepaid gift card and you could use it at any store that accepted, I think it was a Visa card. The Kemp cash, you have to use at specific stores that are in this program where they sent it. So everybody needs to look for the email, and also if you didn't receive it, check and make sure that you are on the list. They sent it to the email, and Carly, you may not have done this if you haven't renewed your certificate recently. They sent it to the email that the Professional Standards Commission has on file.
And I just renewed last year, so I should have received it. Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
I did not.
Okay, I'm going to put the link with the information from the Department of Education that includes the information about if you did not receive that email, how you can, who you need to contact to make sure that you get your Kemp cash. And
this email should be received by teachers, paraprofessionals, special education,
yeah,
and GNETs.
So, but I'm going to say, as I said, when the Sunny money came, it's an election year, so all the things are flowing, and we should realize why that's happening and think about who has truly supported public education and everything for public education. Joe, let's talk. There was a whole bunch of other stuff that came through at the end of the session.
Let's briefly talk about TEKS.
Yes, TEKS. Yeah. The Senate had 56 bills, and House Bill 1295, which was the Teacher Keys bill, was on that list. And it was still on that list that had not been brought up when they gavelled the day done at 12:15. So it passed the House 154 to 6 or 156 to 4. So there was tremendous support in the House. It passed the Senate Education Committee, but it was not a priority to come up before the Senate before things are done. So that's one of the things that I think will go to on our priority list for 2023.
And for those who aren't aware, this would have taken the needs development rating and made it constructive rather than punitive. And Lisa, you may want to just comment a little bit on how that would have worked. I think in 2 years, 2 needs developments in 5 years, you can't renew your certificate. Is that right?
Yes, if you get 2 needs development in 5 years, you are unable to renew your clear renewable certificate. You can apply for a 1-year stopgap certificate in hopes that, yeah, you can.
What is that?
They have a non-renewable 1-year certificate that if you've had the 2 needs development, you can apply for that 1 year non-renewable, and then hope that you get satisfactory and then you can renew. One thing about the Senate not bringing the TEKS bill to the floor, there will be no impact this school year because once again, this school year, teacher keys will have no summative evaluations. The Georgia Department of Education, the Professional Standards Commission, none of them will be collecting any data from teacher keys this year. So any rating that you get at the end of the year is going to be, you know about it, your principal knows about it, but no one else. So yeah, next year, however, we will have test scores this year, and next year it may count. It probably will count. I don't think the Department of Education is going to say for a 4th straight year that teacher keys will not count. So it will probably count next year. So next year, we really do need to make sure that that is there. Another thing that I want our members to know that we are going to be seeking everyone. We will need to be speaking with the Department of Education and the state school board because as we were preparing for this, the current teacher keys manual says that the school districts can choose whether they are going to implement the 90% attendance rule in counting test scores. So the state law was passed several years ago that only students who are in attendance 90% of the instructional days would count toward test scores counting for our evaluation. The handbook says the districts can choose that. So that's something we're going to have to work to make sure it is removed. And I guess the State Department decided since school districts can waive everything else, so maybe they can waive this too. But that is something that we're definitely going to have to deal with.
Speaking of waivers, Lisa, you might want to talk about the phenomenon that we saw this year about waiver language.
Yes. And if we could see House Bill 1084, I would be interested to know if the final version includes the punishment for districts who are in violation that they lose their waivers. But yeah. One of the versions said that districts that were in violation of the divisive concepts would lose one or more of their waivers. And we saw quite a few bills that specifically said this bill is not waivable. If it becomes law, it cannot be waived. So I think the legislators are realizing what the waivers are doing and the fact that the waiver system gives the Board of Education literally a veto over any state law or state board rule. But so they are realizing, but
what are they doing about it?
Well, they're protecting the new legislation for being waived, but we need them to go back and protect the legislation that's been there a while from being waived.
Yes. Like
we'll be back
class
next year.
size.
Yeah, we'll be back next year on that issue for sure. A couple of things just touching on. There was a lot of discussion about COVID in schools. There were two bills that passed, just to mention. One prohibits the state and local governments from requiring a COVID vaccination. That would include school boards. So a school board can't require a COVID vaccination. The other is the governor's mask bill, which basically makes Swiss cheese out of a school district mask requirement policy by allowing anybody to opt out of it that wants to. So imagine there's a new outbreak and it's very serious and its spread is rapid. The law would allow parents to opt out of the mask mandate if that's what the school district, if the school district had such a mandate. So
Now, is this only for schools? Is this only regarding schools? Because I mean, the mask mandates are,
yeah,
you have
on the
one
mask mandate,
statewide.
yeah, it pertains to schools.
Okay,
It's called the Unmasked Georgia Students Act.
okay.
The COVID vaccination, it applies much more broadly. So just mentioning those few bills. Lisa, we had a financial literacy bill passed on the last day of the session as well. That was SB 220, I believe.
Yeah. Which to me is real interesting, because it requires high school students to have a half credit course in financial literacy. And it says it can count as math, social studies, or an elective. But it also says the content in that course can be combined with another course, which is what the State Board of Education did in December when they created the new financial literacy and economics course. So I'm not sure what the impact of that one's going to be. It also has a civics education group to study civics, and it directs the PSC to create a financial literacy certification. Talking to some of our social studies teachers, there's already a financial literacy course available that any high school can offer. So other than saying they passed a financial literacy course, I don't see what the impact is. But I kind of feel like, Grace, you may tell me if you agree. I think Joe may. I kind of feel like there were quite a few bills this time that were solutions in search of a problem. And even if no problem existed, they wanted to pass a bill so they could tout to some special interest group, hey, I passed your bill.
Well, I think some of the parental complaint bills that were passed fall in that description. Many of them are just repeating existing state law. But Grace, do you want to talk a little bit about a couple of those bills?
Yeah, and to answer your question, Lisa, I agree. And what is hilarious, or I guess ironic, maybe you can correct me on that, is that particularly with HB 1084, before people were even talking about critical race theory, and HB 1084 prompted more question about what that is and exponentially increased Google searches on critical race theory, bringing it into the lexicon when it wasn't before. So I don't know if it's ironic or if it backfired, but it certainly was not an issue that people were concerned about or was even on their radar beforehand. So then you have, and these were actually passed before signing die, but HB 1178, which was a Parents' Bill of Rights bill that came out in lockstep with the rest of the nation as far as these types of bills goes. And that was to establish a new complaint process for objections to instructional material. We all know that there is already a process in place for parents to make complaints about objectionable material, and that goes through multiple levels that are designed to be, and I assume to be, fair and transparent. And then there's also SB 226, which was the quote unquote book banning bill, but basically it also created a process that's already in place to object to certain materials. So it encourages parents to object to books in school libraries that are quote unquote harmful to minors. And I think what's weird about that one is it started out as a criminal bill where there were criminal sanctions against teachers if they were found to be in violation of that. And the final bill did not have that in there, thankfully. In fact, by the time it got to the House this year, it had already been removed, which is obviously something that we're grateful for. But both of these bills claim to be about transparency, more transparency for parents. And I think we all heard about what happened on Sine Die, where they passed bills that nobody had even seen. So, and all of these bills are going to the governor to be signed.
Yeah. One thing I will say to our members, I think House Bill 1084, House Bill 1178, SB 226, all of these bills are going to put more emphasis on our school administrators. All of these bills put the administrator in the decision-making role. So not only is it going to cause more work for administrators dealing with all these complaints, it's going to put the decisions on administrators. And I have said throughout this process, every administrator I know is risk averse. I've heard more than one administrator say to me, we don't want to be the school they're showing on the 6 o'clock news. So it's going to be incumbent on us to have administrators in our building who understand that they are going to have to, in some cases, stand up and support the classroom teachers and their choices in the classroom. And I know that's sometimes hard, but that's what administrators are going to have to do.
I guess my question is, what happened to policing or raising your child and not making decisions for my child? Just putting that out there.
One of the things Lisa said when and by the way, Lisa was great. She testified on all these bills at the Capitol and was persuasive. But one of the things that impressed me that she noted was this adversarial relationship that we're putting teachers, that we're fomenting. Thank you. These adversarial procedures that pit teachers against parents. I mean, every teacher I've ever met has said we're begging for parents to be involved in their child's education, and rather than do things that facilitate that collaborative and cooperative relationship, we're setting up complaint processes to harass educators. There's commentary in that, and I'm not sure exactly what it all means, but there are clearly legislators in Georgia who don't think much of public education or public teachers.
And one thing I will say there that I find amazing, these same legislators who tell us over and over they love the teachers, they love public schools. I hear it over and over and over. My wife, my mother, my grandmother, my sister-in-law, my cousin, my aunt. I hear all about the educators and their families and how much they love educators. But then they support bills that are bad for educators, bad for education, take funds from public education. And Carly, I think a part of it is then even legislators who were clearly frustrated with the parents who were showing up for these bills and clearly did not appreciate the way the parents were acting in the committee meetings, then voted for the bills. And I don't understand. I think you're right that some of these parents, community members believe that they have, that their rights extend to dictating to everyone else. It's no longer my rights apply to me. My rights apply to me, and I get to make the rules for everyone else. And that was very clear.
That's called privilege.
Yes.
Let me mention a couple of retirement bills for our retired and pre-retired members.
Yeah.
There was one bill that passed that we supported, although I think they limited its usefulness. House Bill 385. If you've been following anything that we've written about the legislature, this has been going on for a while, but it's an effort to encourage retired teachers to return to the classroom full time after years in retirement, but at full pay and with benefits, but only in high subject need areas, which will be determined by the RESAs, and only for those educators with 30 years graduate service. It did not originally have just those with 30 years experience included, but by limiting it to that group, I think they've limited the number of educators, retired educators, that would take advantage of it. But it is in general a good policy bill, and that did pass. The other thing I want to let members know is that the chairman of the Senate Retirement Committee, Randy Robertson, is going to hold hearings this summer on the PSERS, the Public School Employees Retirement System, which is often utilized by bus drivers and cafeteria workers and other ESPs, and which is renowned for pretty crummy benefits. PSERS members got a benefit increase this year of about $1 a month, I think. So just by that, you can tell how meager the benefits are. Salaries not accounted for in the formula that determines how much they get. And there's a lot of room to improve there. So we're appreciative of Chairman Robertson, and we'll look forward to engaging with our members, our ESP members, on and include them in these committee meetings.
I guess, Joe, give us where do we go from here? How about that?
Well, we don't have anywhere to go but forward. We got to keep moving, keep fighting. I feel like we made differences in a lot of key areas this year. I think our strength and our influence is growing at the Capitol. And I look at this session in terms of if GAE had not been at the Capitol this year, what might have happened? We might have ended up with 2 new voucher programs, doubling of the tax incentive. We might have ended up with no recess bill. So I see a lot of good that's coming, and it's driven by the involvement of our members. And we're strong when we speak up, and they listen to us. They don't always like us, but they do listen to us. And the more our members engage their legislators through our legislative contact team, and try to build that hometown relationship, the more successful we'll be. There's nothing like an educated constituent who has a relationship with the legislator. They'll listen to Grace and Lisa and I, and sometimes they'll follow our advice, but it ain't nothing like having a hometown teacher or ESP who votes making those same arguments. So in the end, I'm still optimistic. I feel like we're making some differences there. It was discouraging session in some ways, but there were victories there. But we don't have a choice. We got to continue to fight for the best public education system we can have in Georgia.
Okay, so Carly and Sharon, I got to tell y'all what happened. So Friday, which was day 39, and we were there till 7:30, something like that. Yeah. So Joe sent me a picture that he found that
let's not go there if it's what I think it is.
yeah, I'm going there, Joe.
Oh.
Yeah, I gotta say it. So the other education organizations weren't at the Capitol anymore. And we were there till after midnight Monday night, and after a certain point Monday night around dinner time, they weren't there anymore either. So yeah, I have to go there, Joe, because our members need to know that we are there until the end, and the potential members that are their colleagues across the hall need to know that there was one organization there fighting to the bitter end, bitter though it may be, and that was GAE.
That's because we have our members back.
Yeah.
We
So
have your back.
And on that note, I did put the link in the comments. If you are not a member of GAE, you should join us, because that's truly one of the differences. GAE, we're going to be there. We're going to continue to the bitter end, and we're not going to give up. We didn't win everything we thought we should win this year, but we certainly didn't give up on anything. And we didn't wave a white flag and say, well, if you're going to pass it. No, that didn't happen.
While we're looking at going forward, there are two other study committees this summer that we can be involved in. One of them is on literacy in general, and GAE was responsible for getting an educator included in that study committee. And then there's another one on public education funding. It remains to be seen how deep they want to get into reforming QBE, but that's something also that will involve our time. And also, Lisa, frankly, all of this discussion leads into a discussion about campaigns and elections. And we're in early voting now for primary elections. Primary elections are May 24th. GAE has already begun or already has completed interviewing all statewide candidates. Those who are working with the local association, your opportunity is now to interview the candidates in your legislative district and make recommendations on who we should support. We'll combine that with our own information on voting records and whatnot. But truly, for example, in the state Senate, when you've got 517, for example, the bill on the income tax incentive the state gives for private school contributors, we won that vote. There was a motion to reconsider. The motion to reconsider passed by one vote. If we'd had one more friendly vote in the Senate, we would have kept that from becoming law. And that's why elections and campaigns are so important. Grace Akon is leading that effort for us. Grace, you got anything to say on campaigns and elections? And
yeah, just that if you're watching, all your friends, that it's really important for you to make that FaceTime with the candidates so that you can have a role in deciding who ends up representing us at the Capitol. And if nothing else, this year has shown us how important leadership is and how important relationships are, and how important commitment to the common good, to the public good is. And so I know that's sort of an overarching theme, but what I want to say specifically about campaigns and elections is your candidates have already submitted questionnaires. We're hoping to talk with you, schedule those interviews, have those conversations with them, build those relationships, and then going forward, we're going to be heavily investing in these next 2 cycles, making sure the GAE is represented in the big, I mean, it's going to be a big year. There's a lot of races on the ballot. It's a gubernatorial race, meaning that's going to drive everything else down ballot. And there's going to be a lot of noise. So we want GAE's voice to be as strong as possible amongst all the noise.
And I would remind everyone, if you are not registered to vote, you need to be registering now. I think April 24th would be the last day to register to be able to vote in the primary. Am I right, Grace? I think it's 30 days before. If you register now, though, we know you'll be able to vote in the primary, but you need to register so you can vote in the primary. And then in the general election in the fall, it's also important for everyone to know that if your school board in your district is nonpartisan, they will be elected in May. So yes, Carly, in May. I know DeKalb County, where I work, is a nonpartisan school board. So that election is May 24th, and it may be on page 8 or 9 or 10 of your ballot, but you are electing the people that make the decisions for your school system, and you are going to be electing them in May. It's not you're going to be electing somebody to be on the general ballot in November to be elected. No, they are elected May 24th. So that's something for people to really, if you have a nonpartisan school board, the election day is May 24th. So the other thing, GAE will have endorsements and we will be publicizing those. And I just real quickly, we have about 2 minutes. So I think we need to say this again and again and again. Every candidate who qualified for a statewide race or for a House district or a Senate district in the Georgia General Assembly, if they gave their email address, they received the information about how to be a part of the GAE endorsement process. Every single one. Now, we had candidates who replied back to us and said, I'm not interested. We had candidates who said, I don't think you would endorse me, so I'm not going to bother. But GAE did not exclude anyone. We included everyone, whether there was an R at the end of their name, whether there was a D, whether there was an L, whether there was an I. We included them all. And the question was, how can we find the endorsed candidates for a specific county? We have not completed the endorsement process. The board of directors has to approve the statewide endorsements, and that is going to happen Monday, April 11th. And Monday, April 18th is when we anticipate the House and Senate, the Georgia General Assembly endorsements to be completed. Our locals are interviewing candidates right now. And I'm going to say it again, it's not the R, it's not the D, it's about the E. Every question on our questionnaire is about public education, and every question we asked candidates was about public education. So, and we will publicize that to our members and on our website as soon as we have finished the process. And I know some of our counties are looking at their school boards, and when our locals let us know that they have made those decisions for the school boards, we will let our members know as well.
And I just want to thank Joe and Grace and Lisa for everything that they did and are doing, especially at the Capitol during the session this year, because you guys are amazing. And you have truly kept our members informed and given us ability to speak on the things that are going to make a difference. So thank you guys for everything that you've done.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carly. And I want to thank our members. You know, every time we asked members to respond, they did so. And I'm going to say, we're going to ask you again next year, be ready, because we had legislators say, yes, I received email, I got letters. And when that happens, it truly does change, and it has an impact on all the legislators there, because they know it is very important. So that's our post sine die edition. We will have Facebook Live again in 2 weeks, which will be, today's the 6th, the 20th. And Grace has let us know, Carly and Sharon, that she is working on, she wants us to be talking to lots of people through the campaigns and election season. So she's working on all of those people for us. And everybody enjoy the rest of your spring break if you're on spring break this week. And happy Easter before we get there. And you all have a great evening.